Welcome, friends, to Hebrew Nation Radio and also a podcast, The Bridegroom Comes. Uh, Please like and share this as you're able because in the wedding parable of Matthew 22, the king makes a marriage for his son and sends his servants to bid people to the wedding. And that's our high privilege. If we're not bidding people, are we really his servants? Okay? This is truth for this time because we're living in the time when it's going to happen again. Um, I like very much Ecclesiastes 3:15 in the New English Bible, which says what is has been already, what is to come has been already, and God summons each event back in its turn. Well, there's a lot that's going to be happening soon, and we want to be ready for it. The idea is that the closing events will be rapid ones, and we don't have a lot of time to figure it out. We've had all this time now. We need to get it right. And so please stay with me for this half hour view of the wedding, because basically America is like Egypt. Okay, Egypt was the greatest nation at that time in the south, and every nation like Babylon, Medo Persia, Greece, Rome would come down through the Holy Land to fight Egypt, king of the south. And it was an abusive situation, but Daniel 11 is a running dialogue of king of the north versus king of the south. But in the time of the end, verse 40, the king of the north, which is Babylon, spiritual Babylon, not a city in Iraq, but really Revelation 17 verse 5 says Babylon, mother of harlots and abominations, a city of seven hills, if you can figure that one out, and dressed in the color of scarlet and cardinals, and in in bed with the kings of this earth, okay, dealing with governments, etc. So bottom line is that that's where modern Babylon is, but it's overflowing Egypt. Okay, how? On our southern border, people are coming in, illegal aliens, and the present president, who is not all there mentally, can't even. He's joking about his memory, but it's not a joke. It's dead serious for him. I can tell you that, and maybe it was. What he got that would has affected him and his memory more recently, but I would just say we have trouble coming, and the Bible has the answers thousands of years ahead of time. And we're going to look today at how the wedding occurs, because America is like Egypt. Egypt was, as I said, the greatest nation then. It even fed people in times of famine. That's why Israel came into Egypt. America came to America, pioneers came to America in a time of famine for the Word of God. The Bible was proscribed in the Old World and burned at the stake if they found a Bible in your home. Thank you very much, Rome. But not today. It's been a long struggle for them to divide America, starting with the Civil War, when the Supreme Court Chief Justice Roger Taney said the black man has no rights that a white man is bound to respect. Well, Christians treat everybody as equal, okay? We are brothers and sisters in Christ, so the real Christians don't have a problem, but bottom line, since the Civil War, even Abraham Lincoln said he saw a dark cloud in that on the horizon, and that cloud was coming from Rome. So there's been efforts, and he was assassinated, by the way, like John F. Kennedy was assassinated when he didn't go along with certain Catholic plans. He even said that the secret societies are a repugnant idea to him in a free society. Well, he was dead a week later. So basically, we're dealing with serious issues, and the deep state is deeper than we know. Roots are hard to pull out with weeds that go deep. And I just say Rome has conquered America, and God is going to do something from history, like He did in Egypt. He executed judgment on Egypt, and took Israel to a covenant at Sinai. In Exodus 19, verse 5 and 6, He said, "If you keep my covenant, you'll be a kingdom." Well, He also later said in Jeremiah 3:14, "Return to me, I'm married to you." Well, He regarded the covenant as a marriage as well. And we can do that. It's our initiative this time God got an ignorant bride at Sinai that worshipped a calf 40 days later, and it must not happen to Christ. He's already paid a horrible price. And I'm seeing in the wedding parables imagery that suggests, number one, we don't get it. Like in Matthew 25, we're asleep with the lights out. Even the wise were that way. And in Luke 12:41, Peter asks, is this parable for us or for everyone? Even Peter didn't know who it was for. Well, it's for us. Christ said, blessed is that servant whom his Lord finds watching when he comes. He will gird himself, make him sit down to eat, and serve him. Okay, well, that's Last Supper imagery, and that's when things are going to kick off, as it did in Egypt at Passover time. Last Supper was Passover time, basically, on the eve of Passover. And Christ asked his disciples, watch with me. Couldn't you watch 1 hour? Well, watching was only required at Passover time. The word Gregorio is translated watch, and it means be awake. Okay, but the disciples lost it. They couldn't stay awake. They were overcome with sleepiness. Maybe the devil was part of that. I don't know. But anyway, we need to learn how to stay awake, and I found out how to do it. It's by eating, just as they ate the Passover lamb. Eating is stimulating. They did that in Egypt. They ate the Passover lamb and left nothing till morning. I'm not talking about killing lambs, though, as we could do it spiritually. Christ is the Lamb of God. Read the closing chapters of his life and chew it up in your mind as to what he did for us. And pray between chapters. You can stay awake at least an hour, I'm sure. Invite your Christian friends and share a type of communion. But when Christ said, you don't know the day or hour, but as the days of Noah, it's about second Passover in May, because there are two provisions that I call them 9/11 provisions, because every America knows 9/11, but the Bible did it that way. In Numbers 9, verse 10 and 11, there are provisions. If an Israelite took a long trip, couldn't get back in time for Passover, he was not excused. Passover meant judgment, and he was to observe it in the way that God has asked, and keep it in the second month. And the same with Noah. The flood came with Passover timing, but in the second spring month. And so when Christ said, no man knows the day or hour, but as the days of Noah, I think this year is going to be unique, and I can prove it partly because Joel 2, verse 1 and 2 says the day of the Lord is the day of darkness. And in 1780, there was an unusually dark day, unexplainably dark. Cows came in from the field, chickens went to roost. They used lamps at midday to read a newspaper. And the point is that God marked May 19, 200 years later, when Mount St. Helens erupted and put ash into the sky, and wind carried that ash overnight to darken 3 northwestern states, just like the original dark day was in the northeast. So May 19, God is even playing with the Gregorian Catholic calendar to tell us heads up when it's going to be, because this year, not every year, anybody that looks at the calendar knows and is watching the Jewish days, if you're watching for a new moon or a full moon for Passover, then you know that the calendar has it rotating so that the new moon might be on the 3rd, the 13th, the 23rd of the month, who knows. This year, the new moon in May, second month, like as the days of Noah, falls on the eve, May 9, so that the evening of May 9 and the morning of May 10 is the first day of the month, and the 19th is the 10th day. So that it goes May 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. 19th day is the 10th day, okay? And that's the same day that the sacrifice is selected for Passover. And when people didn't go into the ark, they were selecting themselves for Passover as a sacrifice. But this year, I think it's going to be maybe a dark day as well. I know Homeland Security Chief Jonathan Hollerman said that he was shocked that we haven't had an EMP attack, because it would be so easy to do, he said, with a high altitude explosion. Don't have to hit accurately. Anywhere over the Midwest might knock out the transformers coast to coast, and we would be in huge trouble because those transformers are made specifically for each location. And it takes a year to rebuild them, and during that year, his studies show 90% will die in the cities. There'll be gangs. Truckers can't pump their fuel without electricity, so no fuel to the cities. Big, big problems. And I'm saying this year is the year because of multiple signs. 7 years ago in 2015, when the sun was darkened, a rare solar eclipse on the equinox, and moon turned to blood on Passover. It says in Joel 2:31, before the day of the Lord, and the word for before is panim, means face or facing the day of the Lord. It's not a long time in the future. I believe if God's summoning each event back in its turn, a favorite author of mine said, all the great events and solemn transactions are repeating themselves for the church in the last days. And the point is that one of the greatest events of Old Testament was Joseph's statement to Pharaoh that there's going to be 7 good years of plenty and then 7 of famine. That statement was really responsible for the last 12 chapters of Genesis and the first 12 chapters of Exodus, because it brought Israel down to Egypt for the time of famine, but then they got into bondage, and Egypt threw babies in the river. America is worse than that because we've thrown 63 million babies in the trash can, and we have put most people in bondage worse than what the bondage that Israelites had was honorable. The bondage that we choose with alcohol, tobacco, caffeine, drugs, etc., medical care, those and negative lifestyles, those are all chosen by the people. It's worse than Egypt. So God is going to execute judgment like he did on Egypt and take us to a covenant opportunity. And I believe that that just as Pentecost was the first at Mount Sinai, they said that we'll do the covenant. Well, they were passively willing. They meant to do well, but they worshiped a calf 40 days later, and it must not happen to Christ. So that basically we need to be better than that. And I'm seeing how it happened in Nehemiah's day when they came back from exile and captivity. In Nehemiah's 9th chapter, it says, hold on, I've got it here somewhere. Yeah. At the end of chapter 9, it says, after they read through the book of the law, Deuteronomy, at the end of the week, they said, and because of all this, we make a sure covenant and write in it, and our princes, Levites, and priests seal unto it. And then it tells who were sealed or who signed to it. Well, we can do that too, okay? God is looking for people who are serious and proactive, okay? Not just, well, I'll do it. Well, they messed it up at Sinai, and we must not mess up because it's too important at this point. And if we get it right, he will make us ruler over all that he has. That's Luke 12:44. That's about the wise virgins that get into the wedding. And we can do that if we make if we're, Luke 12:36 says, be ready when I come and knock that you open immediately. What's the knock? Well, there's only one other place in the New Testament Christ knocks. It's Revelation 3:20. I stand at the door and knock. We think gentle Jesus always knocking at the door. Well, this is not about Jesus. That's not even his real name. There's no J in Hebrew, no J in Greek, okay? We'll deal with that later on the issue. But the bottom line is that we have, there will be a knock because the ancient church of Laodicea, materialistic, thinking of they're rich and increased with goods. Christ, Yeshua, is outside knocking. But it ended in an earthquake, okay? Huge knock. And I shared this with a professor of Hebrew one time. And he agreed. He said, you might be right because the Hebrew word for knock is dafak. In Judges 19 or 20, they were beating the door down, knocking. Okay. And so I think God is going to get our attention this time. And just as Egypt was decimated by the death that fell on the firstborn, America, it will be everybody that's been born, I think, will feel it. The fault, I think, when Muslims take the city and they're on the way, by the way, I thought this all was going to happen last spring, and I was wrong, and for a little while couldn't figure it out, but the biblical year does not begin in January, end in December. It begins in spring, Exodus 12:2. This is the beginning of the month, the first month of the year to you, month of Passover. On the 10th day you take a lamb and set it apart for sacrifice. So yes, we can do that, and but if we're watching on the eve of Passover and there's a knock with an earthquake and we feel it, we want to do 7 days of unleavened bread. Not about crackers necessarily, though. In my opinion, this is what Christ said in Matthew 16, verse 12, beware the leaven of the Pharisees, meaning their doctrines. Okay, and in the next chapter, he underscores it when he said in Matthew 17:11, before he comes again, Elias, that's Elijah, must come first and restore all things. And we see in Malachi 4:4 and 5, remember the law of Moses with the statutes and judgments. Behold, I send you Elijah. Okay, so one of the things that Elijah is going to restore is the statutes and judgments from Moses' law. And we see in Ezekiel 20, verse 11 to 24, a sevenfold emphasis of statutes, judgments, Sabbath, statutes, judgments, Sabbaths, linked in a way so that those are the signs of God's people. And the sevenfold emphasis is like Revelation, when you have 7 churches, 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 thunders. Those are anything that has been emphasized 7 times, like God's name in the 10 Commandments. When you see the tetragrammaton, the 4 letters of God's name has been removed, and you see Lord in all capital letters, it was translators, Catholic, either Roman Catholic or little c universal, trying to go along to get along, and they just decided they're going to make God and Lord it. But they got, Solomon said he made his temple to God's name, the glory of God's name. It was a great name, he said. Well, David said in one text, and I meant to look it up, it's in the Psalm 90, 99 somewhere, it was a terrible name. Why? Because it consists of all vowels. Okay, that's what Josephus said. And the textbook of Oxford University's textbook of classical Hebrew agrees that anciently those 4 letters were vowels, not YHWH, Yahweh. Okay, so surprise for some people here on Hebrew Nation, but I've seen a textbook, the Book of Words, published by Jewish Lights Publishing, that agreed that they were vowels. So that's a beautiful concept if you stop to think about it, because vowels have no obstruction like consonants. B, d, m, k, ba. If we only had consonants, we would be extremely limited in what we could say. But God lends us his name with no obstruction, and when you hear a beautiful song, you're hearing the vowel, okay? And because God lends us his name, we should be careful how we use our mouth and what we'd say, and let it be true, because the vowels, we're taking his name in a sense. Let's not take it in vain. And by the way, I grew up hearing God damn it, but that doesn't take his name in vain. My mother used to say, don't take God's name in vain. Well, that's not a name. It's a title. But basically, I'm saying let's use his name wisely and praise him by his name. And Christ said, our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. How do we hallow it? It's not by never saying it, but by appreciating the beauty of a different name. You wouldn't want a God that has a name like Tom, Dick, or Harry. It's got to be different. Okay. Now I'm just sharing the first topic in my series with you as 7 topics that need to be restored. And God's name is the first one. And it has a contextual link to the seals, first seal in Revelation 6. I read to you from Nehemiah 9 that they, when they made the covenant, they signed and sealed. Well, there are 7 seals. In Revelation 5, the last part of it, there's a book with 7 seals. And as they open the seals, we see in the 7 seals, that first of all, there's a white horse. I believe it's a message of truth. Some people think it's Antichrist, but Antichrist has the color of red and scarlet, crimson, okay, blood. And that's really the second horse, is the red horse, and it takes peace from the earth, okay. Well, I think it takes peace from the earth because of the covenant that's made as a result of the white horse, okay, with the message of truth, which I am expressing to you here. And that is that we can make the covenant with Christ and he'll be looking for people, just as when he knocks at Passover. That's the time. You don't know the day or hour, but as the days of Noah, the flood came a week after they entered the ark. Okay, and they entered the ark. Noah entered the ark on the 10th day, so it was really the 17th. It was 2 days past the start of Passover, but I believe we might not have the earthquake till the 17th of the month, which is, I'm sorry, which would really, I believe that May 19 is the 10th day, and 7 days after that will be May 27. We may have a dark day. It might be an EMP attack, whatever. Not sure how, but I believe that May 26 may be the earthquake when Muslims take the city, as they're going to. That's been a push to do that. Erdogan of Turkey appealed for 57 Muslim nations to siege Israel. He says Jerusalem was our city in the Ottoman Empire. We can get it back. Well, I think they will, because Zechariah 14, Day of the Lord, by the way, is an extension of Night of the Lord in Egypt. When God executed judgment on Egypt, he said, this is Night of the Lord in chapter 12, verse 42. And Day of the Lord is 25 times more frequent in the Bible, and it's going to be 25 times bigger, I think, because it'll be the whole world will shake. Everybody will know time of judgment is impending, and earthquake faults like the San Andreas are going to be huge in terms of calamity. Scientists say they see a crescendo of earthquake activity on the Pacific Ring of Fire, and they know calamity can come any time. But the San Andreas is 80 years overdue, and when God shakes the heavens and earth, we're going to get it, because we've thrown so many babies in the trash, and we have enslaved most people. And this is our turn for judgment to begin at the house of God. In a general sense, that's true. In specific senses, it's different churches, and I think every denomination has fallen. They have not regarded the name, they've not regarded the feast days, they've not regarded God's Sabbath or his statutes and judgments. The Supreme Court has approved abortion and same-sex marriage, not gay at all, okay, from God's perspective. And I think we'll be in line for judgment. So when that earthquake quakes, it will signal the beginning of the wedding. And 7 days, Israelites ate unleavened bread. We have 7 topics, and I've just given you the first one on God's name. And actually, when God made a covenant with Israel, he said in Exodus 34, verse 10 and 11, behold, I make a covenant. It's a terrible thing I'm going to do with you. I'm going to drive out the Canaanite. Driving out the Canaanite meant war. And so that's going to take peace from the earth. We're going to go to my website for more information. This 3 words, healthhappinessdestiny.com, and get the book if you want, which is How It All Ends. You see the Statue of Liberty in America. God is going to make a full end of all other nations. And so see how it comes. Thank you. We'll see you again next week. We'll talk again about this. Love that music.